Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Good morning. How's everyone this morning? We're good? Are you awake? Yeah? A little bit, maybe? I want to make sure you are, because we're really doing some really important work this week and really all month long. And I don't want to have to resort to the drastic measures that were such of the wife of the farmer who kept falling asleep in church. We heard some stories about what were their names that he would... Oli and yeah, this is not an Oli story, but kind of similar actually. And do you want to hear what she did to keep him awake in church? Are you guys interested in the story? Because it's kind of interesting. This is the story of Wilbur, the farmer, and his long-suffering wife, Leah. As a farmer, Wilbur worked very, very hard, and he worked so hard that whenever he came into the house, he would just sit down and fall right asleep. And this really became a habit. Whenever he just, would take a break, asleep he'd be. And this habit extended to church. So every Sunday, Wilbur and Leah would dress up in their Sunday best, and they would arrive at their little country church, and they'd sit down in the pew, and he would start to nod off. Okay, and it didn't matter how riveting, how stimulating, and how exciting the minister was, like I am, right? Wilbur would still fall asleep. Leah was terribly embarrassed by this behavior because he even began to snore. She tried everything to keep him awake. She complained to him that she was getting calluses on her elbows from nudging him to keep him alert. And one day she was shopping in a grocery store and she saw a small package of Limburger cheese, and an idea came to her. So she bought the cheese and she dropped it in her purse. And the next Sunday morning, a few minutes into the sermon, Wilbur began to nod, right? And soon he began to snore. Quietly, Leah opened up her purse, she unwrapped the package of cheese, and she held it under his nose. Now, have you smelled Limburger cheese? You kind of know it's not a good thing. And it worked. His eyes shot open, he sat straight up, and in a voice that could be heard all over the church, he said, "Leah, will you please keep your feet on your side of the bed?" So as I said before, the really bad joke, this month in September, we're really going to do some important and timely work. So we really want to be paying attention to a lot of this. I promise no Limburger cheese. I will not bring that here. So this month, what we're doing is we're exploring the profoundly beautiful prayer of St. Francis. And if you don't have a copy of it, I actually do have copies out here that you can take with you, along with a peace meditation by Dr. Ernest Holmes. So whether we come from a Catholic background, or we come from a Jewish background, or a Buddhist background, or no religious background whatsoever, this prayer has a message, I think, for all of us, a message that's really particularly important at this time in history and the evolution of mankind, or humankind, especially with what we've seen been going on. And so that we're all on the same page, I'm going to recite it. Okay, so Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in the giving that we receive. It is in the pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in the dying to self that we are born to eternal life. Although this prayer was spoken almost 800 years ago, I think it's really a timely reminder of our responsibility today to be bearers of peace, love, pardon, faith, hope, light, and joy. I think sometimes we forget the joy part. We get so serious about everything else. We need to be the bearers of joy as well, now more than ever. So each week we're exploring a line and embodying a line or two from the first half of the prayer. And last week we looked at, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. And I gave you all, those of you who are here, an assignment. Does anybody remember what the assignment was? Okay, I'm bringing cheese. That's it. Okay, it was 3 times a day. 3 times.
Focus on peace.
Yes, 3 times a
And I
day.
was amazed it worked in the Middle East.
See?
At least
3
so.
times a day, find a way, exactly, to be an instrument of peace. 3 times a day. Just take a moment to be an instrument of peace. And so, how did it go?
Syria and MRE is all in their thing.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
We haven't had to bomb anybody today.
Well, in the way that things go, synchronicity-wise, what's interesting is Kathy Hearn, Dr. Kathy Hearn, who is a retired minister, I think now, from the United side. She used to be the president of United, but she put out a peace prayer that was so amazing. She put it on our listserv. She said, feel free to put this on your Facebook, send it out to your congregation, use it, whatever. Use it in your daily meditation. So that's what I did. And it was really within a couple of days that she had put that out, that Russia is brokering peace for Syria, and it looks like the airstrikes are going to be averted. And it was amazing. It was just amazing. So I invite you to continue that this week. Be an instrument when you see something out there that doesn't seem to be in sync with things. Be an instrument of peace. But today we're going to explore the second line in the prayer, which is, where there is hatred, let me sow love. Had a lot of fun researching some of this. Dr. Ernest Holmes, was asked toward the end of his life here on earth, if you had to do it all over again, would you change anything about this teaching, specifically about what you wrote in the Science of Mind textbook, which is the book that sets forth the belief system, really, of our teaching? And his answer was yes. I would have changed something. I would have focused less on the law and more on love. I think that's really interesting, because we know that love points the way, but law makes it happen. And that's what he has said in his textbook. But he focused so much on that mechanical part of the law, and he would have focused more on love. Why do you think he would have said that? I think he answered this question in 2 very powerful but brief sentences in the Science of Mind textbook. He said, love is the grandest healing and drawing power on earth. It is the very reason of our being. Love is at the very root of our nature. Our being requires love. We cannot exist without it. Love is the central theme to all spiritual paths. If you think about every major religion out there, it is the central theme to all of them. Just look at this list of paraphrases from various spiritual belief systems. We have Hinduism, which says one can best worship the Lord through love. Buddhism says, let a man cultivate toward the whole world a heart of love. Confucianism, to love all men is the greatest benevolence. Sikhism, God will regenerate those whose hands there is, in whose hands there is love. Judaism, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself. Christianity, God is love, and he that abideth in love abideth in God, and God abideth in him. And religious science, in the arms which are all-inclusive, divine love encompasses everything. And so it's our role as spiritual beings to sow love wherever we go, particularly where there appears to be hatred. So what exactly is hatred? Wayne Dyer, everyone familiar with Wayne Dyer, has an interesting perspective of hatred in his book, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. First, he sets the premise. You can see contending forces of good and evil, love and hatred everywhere. Many believe that these 2 opposing forces in the world are God versus the devil. I have spent considerable time in this book attempting to disavow such a preposterous notion. How is it possible for both God and the devil to exist if there is only one creator and one power in the universe? It is not. There is only God, and God is only love. Yes, God is only love. Now, try this idea on for size. This is Dr. Wayne Dyer. He goes on to write, for me, the truth about hatred is that hate is love. Okay. That's right. I perceive hate as love energy, which is the only energy there is, going in the opposite direction. All hatred can be transcended by loving because love really is all there is. The feeling and expression of hate simply must be reversed to head in the opposite direction. In the ancient Dhammapada, the sacred scripture of the Buddhist tradition, we're reminded that hating ceases by loving, not by hating. In other words, I thought when I read this in his book, I thought, just like, us going over and bombing Syria isn't going to stop the killing that's already going on. You don't kill to stop killing. It just seemed, so this is an interesting concept here. This is why St. Francis asked God for the ability to bring love to the presence of hatred and thus remove the illusion that hate exists. It's just an illusion. It's just part of the same spectrum, right? So hate equals love energy going in the wrong direction. Hate ceases by loving, not by hating. Because what happens when we focus on hating? We just get more hate, right? We just get more non-love. What we focus on, we attract into our lives. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. said, Gandhi resisted evil with as much vigor and power as the violent resistor, but he resisted it with love instead of hate. True pacifism is not unrealistic submission to evil power. It is rather courageous confrontation of evil by the power of love. So our mission, according to St. Francis, according to the Dhammapada, according to Ernest Holmes, according to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and to Gandhi, and according to Wayne Dyer, is to sow love wherever there is anything that does not look like love. So how do we do that? Well, first, we must begin with self-love. We've got to start right where we are, don't we? And I want to suggest that the place that we start is inside ourselves. If you have places within your heart where your hatred for yourself resides, it is incumbent upon you to let love replace this hatred as well. You may be thinking, well, if only she knew how dark it was inside of me, or how many things I've done wrong, or how many times I've messed up, or how bad I really am, then she really wouldn't be saying this. But consider St. Francis, the man who bore the stigmatic of Christ, the man who tamed wild animals with his holy presence, the man who miraculously healed the sick, the man who preached unconditional love, and the man who was elevated to sainthood was not always so. In fact, he grew up wealthy and completely indulgent. Later in his life, he told a friend, I have done and been everything you can think of that is abhorrent and unholy. Didn't know that about him, did you? Wow, so if he can do that, if this is true for St. Francis, surely we can take a look at all of our unholy actions and thoughts and recognize that we need to forgive ourselves, right? And replace that self-hatred with self-love. Besides, everything that we've done, Dyer writes this, everything you've done for which you may carry about self-contempt is in the past. It's not in the present, it's in the past. It should not have any effect on you right now. So don't spend any of today entertaining self-hate. Remember that the truth about hate is that it is love, only it's going in the wrong direction. Shift your gears into reverse and begin moving your thoughts in the direction of love. Self-forgiveness is the means to accomplish this reversal. All of your errors of the past, mistaken judgment, and self-perceived flaws occurred because they had to. That's what got you to where you are today. What happened in the past, we bless it and love it because it gets us where we are today. But we don't have to stay there. You need to be there in that darkness in order to be able to transcend it. These are the words of Wayne Dyer. And as for focusing on your flaws, I love Wayne Dyer's attitude. He says, this is an insult to God, plain and simple. Because if we're made of God's stuff, we don't want to insult God, right? We want to say, well, look at this. No. You are divine piece of God. You are flawless. Since God is good and all that is created of and by God is also good, there are no mistakes, there are no flaws. There was a little girl who was sitting on her grandfather's lap as he read her a bedtime story. From time to time, she would take her eyes off the book and reach up and touch his cheek. Just a little wrinkled, a little scruffy, right? And then she would alternately stroke her own soft cheek, and then his, and then hers again. And finally she spoke up. Grandpa, did God make you? Yes, sweetheart, he answered. God made me a very long time ago. Oh, she paused. Grandpa, did God make me too? Yes, indeed, honey, he said. God made you just a little while ago. Feeling their respected faces once again, she observed, wow, God's getting better at this, isn't he? But actually, no. God doesn't get any better at all because we are all already flawless. In The Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes writes, we should definitely daily declare the truth about ourselves, realizing that we are reflecting our statements into consciousness and that they will be operated upon by it. This is called, in mysticism, high invocation, invoking the divine mind and planting within it seeds of thought relative to oneself. And this is why some of the teachers of olden times used to instruct their principals to cross their hands over their chests and say, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me. Definitely teaching them that as their mentality held themselves, so they would be held. So let's try that exercise. Let's do that today. He tells us that our teachers of the olden times would do this. So let's all cross our arms and say together, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me. Okay, come on, let's say it like we mean it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me. Okay. How'd that feel? Pretty good, huh? Have you ever done any of the exercises that Louise Hay talks about where she has you looking in the mirror, looking deep into your eyes and telling yourself, I love you? It's very powerful. It's very powerful because the you that you are seeing and saying that to is, and that's what our Namaste prayer is all about. It's that God spark within you. It's who you truly are. It is your divine identity. It's a good thing to practice every day. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me. You are a divine creation and you do not need to reject your divinity any longer. As a spiritual being, your worthiness is already given. It's already there. You are a piece of God, a God spark. So remind yourself of this truth whenever you resort to any form of self-hatred. And I have to tell you, growing up, I would listen to my dad as he would try to fix something and he would make a mistake and he would berate himself. I think maybe in his mind it was a pattern from his father, maybe saying he was stupid or clumsy or something like that. So he wouldn't wait for someone else to do it. He would do it himself. Oh, Dick, that was dumb, and I thought, wow, I usually get that from someone else, not myself. But it can be very, very harsh. We can be so harsh on ourselves, and we can do that. So don't do that. Stop doing that. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself, and you are sowing love in your energy field, which can then flow out to others. Because when we're hard on ourselves, what do? We block our own love. That is what needs to be going out and spreading out there. So that brings us to number 2, which is love others. There's a great prayer. Dear Lord, I'm proud to say so far today I've got along all right. I have not gossiped, whined, or bragged, or had a single fight. I haven't lost my temper once or criticized my mate. I have not lied, I have not cried, or loudly cursed my fate. So far today, I've not one time been grumpy or morose. I've not been spiteful, cold or vain, self-centered or verbose. But Lord, I'm going to need your help throughout the hours ahead. So give me strength, dear Lord, for now. I'm getting out of bed. Okay, so yeah, it's pretty easy while you're in that mode before you get out of bed. Carry it forward. Jesus was once asked by a scribe which commandment was the greatest. And Jesus said that you are to love God first and love your neighbor as yourself. The scripture points to the importance of expressing love in our life directed by the wisdom of spirit. In The Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes comments on this passage and says, to love God alone is not enough, for this would exclude our fellow man. To love our fellow man alone is not sufficient, for this would be too limited a concept of God. When we realize that God and we are one and not two, we shall love both. We shall love one another as expressions of God, and God as the life principle in all. And, Suzanne could share with you stories of how she does that, even when presented with evidence of non-love from someone, she blesses and loves these people and the changes that come about these people that in her life. blesses them with love, and it's so powerful. So what do we do when we are faced with people who appear to be operating in the flow of love in the opposite direction? Dyer suggests that hatred comes from those who feel hated in some way, hence Suzanne's sending of love out there. And there's two ways you can help to change that feeling. One, by letting people with hateful behavior see that you personally have only love for them. And two, by seeing through the behavior to their truth. Again, that's what we do with our Namaste. Here's a profound piece of spiritual advice that I heard recently. This is so amazing. Choose to see more in people than they are showing you. Choose to see more in people. You've heard about teachers out there who will take a child and just have an expectation, they see something special in that child even when they're not exhibiting it, and that child rises to the occasion. Those are fabulous, inspiring stories. You may be thinking that all of this love stuff seems to be too theoretical and theological to apply when you're in an encounter with someone who is directing hate your way. We've all been in those situations, or it's coming at us. But be assured that your simple recognition of hatred being a form of misdirected love and a reflection that the person feels unloved is enough to disempower and release that hatred. We're more powerful than we think we are. This is an excerpt from The Faces of Peace, and this is from a teacher who shared lessons in human compassion and understanding that he'd learned from his international students. So this goes along with, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Ahmed, and this is a fictitious name, was a young engineering student from Iraq whose immense courage and grace moved hundreds of those around him. I remember with a chilling clarity the night I had to pull him from class to inform him that his home city of Baghdad was being bombed. For weeks he had no way of knowing how or where his parents were. In the midst of his pain, he decided to share his struggle very openly with the campus. To many individuals who saw the Gulf War as a sort of televised video game of strategically guided smart bombs, Ahmed brought a startling heart and soul to that war. For those to whom Iraq was a hated enemy nation of maniacal Saddam Hussein's, Ahmed brought quite another face to mind. The more he shared, the more others broke down their own barriers to turn a face toward peace. Ahmed was their good friend, and their love for him transformed their blind hatred. It is proven that when we sow love in the face of hatred, hatred cannot survive. Just like when we turn on the light, darkness cannot survive. It's just not possible. A concerted and concentrated effort for peace has been going on through our teaching for, I can't think, 1988, was that when it started? When we started the World Peace Prayer? And I'm told magnificent things have happened since that, directed, concerted, committed effort on the part of each center, each person within those centers. We can change the course of things when we sow love and choose to come from that position of peace. Teilhard de Chardin, a French monk in the 19th century, wrote, "Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness the energies of love, and then for the second time in history the world, we will discover fire." So this week, I invite you to find ways to discover fire as you sow love for yourselves and for others, wherever you go. And bring back your stories to share next week, because I would love to hear them. How, if in the face of something that appeared to be love going in the wrong direction, you changed that direction and saw love. And so it is.